Hello, I'm Portia Parker Griffin, and I want to welcome you to the Career 101 podcast, a place for ambitious professionals and seasoned executives who want an edge in their career. We're talking about all of the things you were never taught or told when it comes to career growth, development, and change. Now, let's get into it. Today, we are talking about transforming culture in the workplace with Carol Marzouk. Carol is known as the executive lion tamer for her ability to transform narcissists and bullies into well-behaved relationship experts. And she turns struggling workplaces into high-performing collaborative teams. With a sharp focus on addressing the root cause of dysfunction, she helps leaders build trust, resolve conflicts, and inspire their teams to achieve lasting success. Whether guiding organizations through complex transitions or strengthening leadership, Carol's expertise creates meaningful change where it matters most. Hi, Carol. How are you today?
Hey, I'm fabulous. How are you doing?
I am doing well. I don't know if I can top fabulous, but we are excited to have you with us to discuss transforming culture in the workplace. But first, we want to know a little more about you. So tell me about 7-year-old Carol.
Oh my goodness. So 7-year-old Carol did not speak English and was very much afraid of this new era in her life because we had left Mexico City and starting first grade here in the US, not knowing a word of English and being told that I can't be part of the ESL program until second grade. For a little while, I had one friend, and that was a goldfish in the in the school and in the classroom. And I remember that being a pivotal moment because I was talking to my little goldfish and I was thinking, hold on a second. Like, I need that now. I need the ESL now. I don't know how I'm going to be successful. I mean, and I'm sure I wasn't thinking these words, but how am I going to make it if I don't get what I need, if I don't get the tools that I need? So I ended up going to the principal. My parents couldn't come with me because they were in real estate and I knew I would have to wait too long. So I ended up going to the principal and making my case with a translator and after 2 tries she allowed me to go to get into the program. And that was quite a moment for me because there was a lot of transition, there was a lot of newness, and I also realized, like, I have to figure this out. And so yeah, that was pivotal for me.
Yes. What I'm hearing, Carol, is that you are also very brave to go to the principal and make your case, not once, but twice. We have a lot of clients who are adults that don't want to try something a second time if the first time isn't quote unquote successful to them. And even with the language barrier, make your case. So that says a lot about you. What did 7-year-old Carol want to be when she grew up?
I wanted to be a family therapist slash teacher because my family, I'm the fifth of 5 girls. And in Mexico, number 4 and number 3 tried to kill me, literally, so several times. So one of them would try to throw me out of the balcony in the 9th story. The other one would try, like, see if the stroller would fly with me in it and like would do weird things. And I had to learn how to survive, but also how to manage the conflict within a household where there are 5 different types of crazies. And the parents, as much as they loved us, they had their lives. So when I had to finally, figure out like how to survive and then also how to help them with their own conflict because I was always part of it because I was the youngest, so I was always there. And so I had to learn how to get them to see the other person's side and all of that at a very, very young age. So So all of that, I think, really helped to shape what I wanted to do and be a teacher, be a family therapist. And that was until I was actually working with kids and I was like, yeah, I can't do it because they were abused kids and I would come home every night crying, and I'm like, no, can't. I have to work with adults.
Mm. Well, I want to thank you for sharing that with us because, and I'm sure you see this with your clients too. I have had clients who have had some, very deep or traumatic experiences before. And, they can continue to affect you and then also sometimes even play out in your life and situations. So I want to acknowledge you for surviving, one, but also, you know, becoming a, coach and consultant to help other people, now. So definitely want to acknowledge you for that. And I had a thought, Carol, because this kind of happened to me a little bit. I was the second girl and my dad wanted a boy. And I don't know if in Mexico, you know, the preference for males is the same as it is in the US. But when you said the fifth of five girls, I said I was the second of girl, and I felt that. Did you happen to feel any of that in terms of hoping for a boy and oh, it's another girl?
I think the reason I didn't is because between number four and me, there were two or three miscarriages and they were all boys. And so my mom and dad, I think, were just like, we surrender. And when I was finally born, after that, I think they were just happy that I was born healthy and but I don't know if any of my other sisters, very interesting question, if they felt that. I'm going to ask them that.
Yeah, just my own kind of, I guess, birth order psychology mixed with something else going on there.
Yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
psychology nerd, which I mentioned to you, Carol, and some of our listeners know that. So I want to fast forward a little bit, Carol. I want you to tell us about some highlights or pivotal moments in your career before you started your business.
Yeah, I would say that the most pivotal moment in my career was when I was in corporate and I was in charge of the leadership and development for the whole enterprise. So for all the different businesses under the big umbrella. And I was able to travel. We had a pretty nice wallet. So I was able to take people to different countries and do some excellent programs there. And the pivotal moments there were two men who I thank every day now. So I will say that. So you know how the story ends. But the first one was 6'4", very heavy Irish accent, and he would follow me everywhere. And right before I'm about to speak, right before I'm about to work with the board of directors or the executive team or the CEO, he would pull me aside and he would say, "You are worth nothing. You bring zero value to any of this. And I don't know why the CEO wants to work with you. He should want to work with me. I don't know why they want to work with you. You have nothing, nothing. You have nothing to bring." And he would do a variation of this every time, but he would always say, "You have zero value. You are nothing." And here's where it got interesting for me. I took this for 2 years. Now think about this. I'm teaching people how to address these situations. And now it's happening to me. And all I do is look up at this guy because I'm 5'2" on a good day. And so I just look up at him and I'm just shocked every time. And I don't handle it. And after 2 years of that, where it got to the point where I just lost so much weight. I was under so much stress from that. I saw his name and I instantly felt like throwing up. And I finally was like, I'm such a fraud, right? Like, wow, what a fraud. Because how can I be helping these other people? But then it happens to me and I'm like, let me freeze, right? And so that was one thing, and I'll let you know what I did in a second there. The second guy, around the same time, same company, same corporation, he wanted to sleep with me. And he made it very clear that if I don't sleep with him, and he was my direct boss, if I don't sleep with him, that he'll tell everyone that I'm sleeping with him. And guess who worked at the same company? My husband. And so my husband was in a totally different department. He was in the engineering department. We're in leadership and development. And so he also had a way to make sure that my husband didn't get promoted and didn't wasn't able to succeed and maybe even get fired because he's so high up in the company. And so he would say that to me, right? So I'm going to tell everybody, I'm going to make sure that Rich doesn't get anywhere. I'm going to, all these things. And I cowered under the and I used to be a self-defense instructor because when I was at UCLA there were a lot of rapes and a lot of so it's like I'm going to protect I'm going to protect myself, so I became a self-defense instructor, and now this is happening to me in corporate, and I'm again like pinned against the wall and just frozen, pinned against the floor and just frozen. And once again, and it was interesting because the parallel of both of these things happening to me at the same time after being at that company for a long time was weird. It was the universe saying to me, you've got to switch where you are, right? And so I'll tell you how I handled both of them. So with the first one, I finally, because I did feel like such a big fraud, I finally said to him, okay, so I hear what you're saying. Now tell me 3 things that I'm doing well. And he got so angry and he had this look of disgust on his face. Like, how dare I ask him that? Like, there's nothing, right? And what do you think he did?
I would have, I mean, I have a few thoughts, but my first guess would be he kind of either doubled down on the fact that he didn't think you had any value, or he just didn't say anything at all and just kind of stormed off. One of those two.
Yeah, well, you're actually correct on both of those.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So the next time he came out actually a lot worse. The next time after I said that, he got a lot nastier. And he tried to make me even smaller. And I did it again because he didn't think I would. And so then he became silent. And the third time and the fourth time and then the last fifth time, he was silent. He sneered and he gave me a look of disgust. He never ever responded. But what he did was he stopped. So finally. And then with the other guy, we were at Yale. Actually, I was doing this thing with a Yale rowing coach, and we'd have the leaders come. And so we were at the Omni Hotel, and I opened my door like an idiot, and he comes in, and there was a fruit tray because the hotels give you fruit trays when you do events. So there was a fruit tray, and there was a knife and a fork, and he took the knife and he went to basically stab the apple, right? And as he was about to stab the apple, he's like, I'm done. I'm done asking. I'm done telling you. This is what's. And so I said, you know what? You're right. I think you should tell people that we sleep together. I think that it would give me a lot of clout sleeping with you. I think you should tell the world. And as far as, and I was telling my husband since it began, like I was telling him since it began, but he's an engineer. And so he's like, can you just like compartmentalize it? And right. He's very practical. And so I told him that. And I said, and as far as Rich is concerned, honestly, I don't know that he loves his job. You might be doing him a favor. So if you could get him fired, or if you could make sure, like, I think that might help us. And he just got white because I completely disarmed him. And I mean, it took me 2 years though. It took me 2 years. And I'm not proud of that because I was literally doing that. Like I was doing this, I was coaching this stuff. And then I couldn't do it for myself until I snapped out of it. So that I would say was a pivotal time where I just It was like, okay, I'm ready to go out. And then Chris Gardner from The Pursuit of Happiness, the real guy, he
Mhm.
was a friend of mine, and he's the one that said, you know what? I don't know what you're waiting for. Do it. And that's when it happened.
Wow. Wow. Well, I'm sure you already know this, but you have a very powerful story and testimony for people to hear, especially women. I think most women have experienced some kind of sexual harassment, if not assault, in the workplace or at school. So I want to thank you for sharing that and also sharing how you found your voice in all of that. It sounds like you were taming executive lions, definitely in corporate as well. So I'm definitely going to assume that that was a motivator with starting your own business. So I want to transition into talking a little bit about company culture, which I don't know how big of a transition it is because, well, I don't want to get into the company culture at the organization because I have some thoughts on maybe how it was, but we'll progress. On the show, we've talked about company culture back in episode 71. Before we get in too deep today, I want to know what is your definition of company culture?
Company culture to me is simply daily behaviors. It's how we're showing up every day.
Yeah, yeah, love that. Why do you think company culture is important? The Career 101 podcast is brought to you by Fly High Coaching, where we help our clients soar to their full potential. Executives and leaders are setting out to achieve their company goals, but without the right support, it can be difficult, if not impossible. Employee performance, productivity, and company culture all affect organizational revenue and profits. We offer customized consulting, coaching, and training solutions and can serve as your external talent development partner. Check us out on our website, fly-highcoaching.com.
Well, if how we're showing up every day determines what our relationships look like and how we feel when we walk into the workplace. And actually, let's back up how we feel when we wake up to go into work or even to go to your desk at home if you're remote. Like all of that plays into it. Does my manager have my back? Are they my ally? I mean, that's, one of the top factors in employee satisfaction, including manager satisfaction, is the person I report to. Do they have my back? Is my relationship good? And it's interesting because Gallup found, I don't know how many years ago, it was a few years ago, that 82% of managers are seen by their direct reports as lacking in the area of leadership and lacking in the area of being able to build and sustain relationships with them. And so that's interesting, right? Because when you ask the managers, they're like, "Oh, I think I'm great at that." And so that's where the culture kind of, can get into trouble because we have our own blind spots and bias, and we think we're great as managers, but our direct reports are like, "Hey, you didn't have my back in that conversation. You didn't have my back when somebody, chewed me out in an email. You didn't, and so that's where it can get really, really wonky. Did I answer your question even?
You did, you did. So nowadays we are hearing about constant change, right? In response to, economic, industry, and leadership changes in organizations.
Mm.
And for that reason, there are a lot of companies going through, reorganizations, downsizings, and layoffs. How do you think those types of events affect culture within a company?
Well, it creates a lot of disengagement. I think that, there's a very big difference between change, the external happening, all of the things you just mentioned, and then the psychological aspect of that, right? The transition that's going on internally. And while everything outside, like the S&P might be down, the tariffs are, the reciprocal tariffs are coming into play, right? The unemployment rate, like all of those things are happening, whether we like it or not. Just like COVID happened, whether some of us said yes or no, it didn't matter. It happened. It was external. But COVID's a great example. You would talk to people that are like, it's not a big deal. I'm not wearing a mask. I don't need to be wearing a mask. And then you had people that are like, get me 20 masks, right? Like I'm going to wear 3 masks at a time. And
Mhm.
so, right. So people were stuck in the ending of like how it used to be versus the new beginning and really getting on board with that. And then some people were somewhere in the middle in the swamp internally, totally lost. And the challenge with change in the workplace and in our lives is that when our leaders, when the people that we look up to are stuck in the swamp, when they are lost, they can't even know, they don't know how to survive themselves. They don't know where to go, and they're looking for any kind of guide or any kind of nuance in conversation with their leaders to say, oh, this is what's happening. And we create all these stories that are not true. And that's where gossip happens. That's where, people get into negative cohorts, right? They're trying to survive based on stories they're making up because our minds need to have a story around what's going on. So I think that where we need to focus is helping the leaders, and by leaders I know leaders are across the whole organization, the executive team, right? The people that we look to for information and help and guidance and leadership. We need to start there, and we need to help them become self-aware as to where they're at so that we know how they need to move, and how they need to pull the people forward into this new beginning instead of dragging people down with them, disengaging more people because they're people managers, and then creating a more toxic workplace.
Yeah. So, what do you think are the core aspects of a culture change?
I think one of the key things is making sure that it's a culture by design and not by default. I think that if we do what, a lot of companies still do this, we let's the executive team, let's get together in a room and then decide what all of like what our culture is, what our values are, and then we're going to create big posters and we're going to put them everywhere. And then naturally it's going to infuse into everybody. And then they're going to start doing this, right? That's what used to happen. I think I still see that happening in a lot of companies, and it's so misguided, right? For obvious reasons. It's like, oh, there's a poster that says that I should be kind and, and I should be a great listener and a great leader and all of these things. Got it. Okay, let me turn that on, right? And now I'm going to show up differently. Doesn't work. And so we need to involve the people that we are asking to live those daily behaviors. We need to involve them in what it should look like. Otherwise, there's no buy-in and we're just ticking a box. I think that is the primary factor.
So, this next question that I have, I think you're already starting to answer it, but how do you think leaders can transform culture in the workplace?
So I'll give you a great example of where it can go wrong and then how we can fix it. So there was an actual example where the executive team said, "Hey, safety," it was a construction company. Safety is one of our big core tenants, right? So let's make sure that we tell everybody how important that is. So from now on, no more meetings in the car. Nobody's going to take meetings in the car because that's unsafe. And so we're going to blast this out, right? No more meetings in the car. Not a week later, 2 executives said, we're having a meeting, and they pulled in people from their teams while they were in the car. And so it's like, let's just do like let's live out loud a totally different thing than what we're actually doing, right? So that's where it goes wrong. And I think, and it's not like they intentionally are like, oh, let's do the wrong thing, but it brings me to the answering your question, which is it's about the self-awareness. It's about looking in the mirror, and it's about saying, how am I showing up with these values, with these daily behaviors? Am I asking people to show up differently than how I'm showing up? It has to start there. It has to start there. And most of us as leaders are not aware of how we show up.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with all of that. What do you think is the next step, right? So let's say that a leadership team is working with, your firm, my firm, some other organizational, consulting firm that has helped them to have that self-awareness. They know how they're showing up. What do you think is a next step for that?
So once they are living what they are saying, the next step is then to then have, accountability around what we say we want to be as a culture, as a firm, right? So what I have my clients do many times is at the beginning of meetings, they'll take one core pillar of who we are, whether it be our values, whether it be the culture, whatever, and have someone talk about how they're living it or how they're getting their team to do it. There are other things that you can do. I have roundtables at some of my clients where they're literally talking about, okay, where are we decided that this was going to be who we are. Great. Where are we seeing evidence of that? And these are monthly. Where are we seeing evidence of that? And where are we falling short? And what do we do about it? And so it's having the conversation and then leaving that roundtable with action items on what do we need to do in order to make sure that we are authentic and we are living what we are saying. And unless we continue to have those conversations and they're real time, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. So, over my years as a consultant and a coach, I've seen many executives and professionals really struggle with the idea of culture transformation. And I think part of it is because the concept of a culture change can seem, overwhelming, scary, or really abstract to people. From your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen executives and professionals have with culture transformation?
Well, I think you mentioned one of the biggest ones, which is themselves, their belief, right? It's this overwhelming, inundating thing. And honestly, I just don't have time for it. We have to make this revenue and we have to grow the company and I don't need to focus on the people stuff, right? Like ultimately, like can we just talk about it another day, right? And we want to be ostriches. And the challenge is that if we don't deal with it before it becomes a huge pain, when it becomes a huge pain, now we've got people that are toxic, that are spreading virus, meaning negativity and toxicity across departments. And now you've got not only a brand issue, but now you've got a net promoter score issue. Like nobody wants to work there. Nobody's going to recommend you to their friends and family. And so I think the biggest challenge is just overcoming their belief about how daunting it can be. It doesn't have to be daunting. If they work with your firm, you make it easy. They work with me, maybe one day we could do something together.
Yeah.
Right? But it's easy. It's totally easy. And if you allow yourself and your team to be guided, it's so easy, especially if you do it the right way and you're not creating resistance. So it's really honestly, it's a mind shift.
hmm Yeah, yeah. To your point about the belief, that it's so much, so big, and then not addressing it and avoiding it. I definitely see those two challenges. So, Carol, tell us more about your business.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I work with folks that are really intelligent, and many times very arrogant. And so when you've got the intelligence and the arrogance, it kind of sucks the life out of the room. And you have all the right answers. And so you are basically allowing people to be in your presence, but you're not going to learn anything from them because you know it all. And so your ego is just so big. And a lot of times that comes from a very deep insecurity. You asked me about 7 years old, right? When I go get in deep and find out what happened during that time period from 0 to 7, 0 to 10, we find why there is that deep-rooted need to always be right, to never be a failure, right? They don't see failing as just, oops, let's course correct, right? They see it as I am a failure and I will not allow that to happen. And so they lead with an iron fist, and those are my people. They're narcissists, they're bullies, they are toxic, and many times they are partners of firms. Many times they are brought in to lead a firm, or they're the founder and CEO. Many times they're the chairman of the board or somewhere on the board. And so I come in and I use neuroscience to basically change that behavior very quickly and sustainably so that we're working with their mind and creating new pathways so that this is not something that we need to do forever, that it's actually going to be long term. So that's what I do. I work with them individually and their teams.
I love that. And we already know that you are an executive lion tamer from your time in corporate. So I'm sure that you've got a great handle on that now. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Do you want to tell us about your book?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just stories, real life stories of, celebrity families that I've worked with, big, humongous companies. And I've changed the names to protect the guilty, right? But it's basically, yeah, it's taming the corporate beasts. And it's interesting because most people are like, well, a lot of these people, they don't want to work on themselves. They don't even know that they're the problem. How do you even get them to open up? And the truth is, which you probably know, is that they're in so much pain that when I get in front of them, I just need 10 minutes, 15 at the most, to get them to a place where they're like, yes, please. And so, yeah, so it's just really interesting. And I love it, right? The harder the case, the more I salivate.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm so excited. So, yeah.
Yes, love that. Love that. So, Carol, we'll be providing a link to your website and other social channels in our show notes so people can find you online. Now, I want to ask you my final question that I ask all of our guests. How do you think executives or professionals can get a positive edge in their career?
I don't know that this is going to be a unique answer, but I know that the only way that my clients and myself get an edge is by learning. Literally always feeling like there's something more to learn. There's something to learn from every interaction that you have, every client that you have, every employee that you employ, everybody, every book that you can read, every podcast that you can listen to. That's why I love your podcast. And thank you for having it for leaders. And I think it's really needed. I think it's that. I think that the minute that we become a closed system and we're like, yeah, we're good, that's when we start to deteriorate and we're not getting better at our craft and not and worse, we're not helping others because we're not getting better, right? That's what it's all about in the end.
Well, Carol, you have shared a lot of wisdom with us today. I'm sure that our listeners can use it to be more confident with their culture transformations and in their careers. We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This episode was brought to you by the Bravebird Career Alliance. the go-to membership designed for seasoned executives and ambitious professionals with everything you need for career planning, strategy, training, and support. Thank you again for listening to the Career 101 podcast. I hope you have at least one key takeaway that you can use in your own career. If you enjoyed hanging out with us, please rate, subscribe, and share this podcast. Until next time, here's to your success.